One, action.
Good evening again, everyone. Recommended action that the Board of Education leaves executive session and returns to the work session meeting at 8:06 p.m.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. We'll now move into instructional personnel. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the instructional personnel appointment of Elizabeth Clifford, 1.0 FTE ELA teacher as a leave replacement for Jacqueline Szymanski at Croton Common High School, effective October 17th, 2022 through December 23rd, 2022 at an annual salary of $65,261, MA Step 1, to be prorated.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the instructional personnel resignation of Samantha Compalone, Croton Harmon High School math teacher, effective June 30th, 2023.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. We'll now move into the consent agenda. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves all items in the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, we will now move into our work session meeting. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker to get started.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's here in person and everyone who's joining us virtually. This is, I believe, the board's third work session of the school year. And as I was reflecting on the first two, the September work session where we got a chance to discuss the future facilities project, and the October work session where we got a chance to again discuss and then approve the future facilities project and some of the beginning work of the strategic plan. Those were two, in my mind, compelling and truly exciting meetings to be a part of. And I'm very confident that we'll feel the same way about tonight's session. And I think what they have in common is a discussion around both the present and the future of the district, as well as a wide range of voices and a wonderful range of perspectives and expertise that's offered. And I'm so thrilled to have a chance for the board and the community to hear from these phenomenal and talented educators here this evening. And as we know, we began the school year with a discussion of a series of guiding questions. And tonight, we'll have an opportunity to hear in depth about some of the initial work that's been done in pursuit of the answer to the fourth question. And I just want to say that from my seat, I'm so proud to be part of a school district community that prioritizes the pursuit of the answer to a question that sounds like, how will we identify and implement effective approaches to ensure connection and engagement with our school district's families whose first or primary language is other than English. I think we all know that the conversations that this team has as leaders, as a governance team, what gets discussed in these rooms, what gets discussed in these meetings, the goals that we set, the questions that we ask, they help to inspire work in our system. They help to inspire movement in a great direction in our community, and they help to provide cohesion and coherence to the people doing the work. That work that might otherwise be done individually or theoretically on an island, hopefully through this kind of goal setting or question posing helps the people doing the work to feel as though it's part of a broader effort, that they're part of a broader system and work that has great value outside of just their classroom or just their school. And I think you're going to see that tonight. I'm really so pleased to have a chance to share the evening with these great colleagues. And we want to begin, I guess, by talking about what some of this work is rooted in. And John's going to talk a little bit about the work of the equity stakeholder team that has been part of the systemic work here for a number of years.
Yeah, I think it's always important to take a moment to really make sure that there is an explicit recognition of that connective tissue from prior work, and in doing so also acknowledge the 40 plus people that were really committed to take a look at really what do we need to do as a system to assure that we are creating the best school system for every individual person within our school community. And the board and the committee will recall that the work of that equity stakeholder team lended itself towards 5 recommendations that were discussed and approved by this board a little over a year ago. Thinking about school climate consciousness, thinking about our hiring and retention practices, thinking about curriculum, thinking about professional development, and then really thinking about this 5th recommendation that we call parent, guardian, and community engagement. And you will recall at the time that the real gist of that recommendation was the desire to have everybody, children, parents, community, had to have full access to what we do, and really feel that there is that level of engagement that is as pure and unfiltered as everyone else's. So what you really hear tonight is really how that directive, how that commitment that was set forth through that team, adopted by this board, and really became part of those guiding questions Steve was just talking about, has really taken root. And one of the early things that we really noticed was that we had to take a look at really an issue that we had in the way we looked at communications with those families where English wasn't the primary language. Because basically, we kept asking when we would send, if you look at that sort of first graphic of just communications going back and forth from home to school, when you were dealing with a different language, we were not understanding why there was such a difficulty. If we were translating a message, if we were creating, let's say, a Spanish version of survey, why weren't we getting the results back? And why was there a feeling of frustration on the part of those families that things were not as easy for them when they were trying to get in touch with the school? So one of the things that really started from this work was looking at a different way that we needed to communicate. And that was really taking the communication, and as you see in the graphic at the bottom of the page, which really is saying that to have a lot of the communications take place within the community, to have us go to the community and have that be the venue where communication happens. And then as I further started to think about this graphic, how much this evening represents the kind of communication that I think is new communication or refreshed communication that happened within us as a school community. You're going to see a lot of professionals who work with these families tonight. And I think you'll hear from them that there is a different kind of communications that's happening internally within our school community, and that those communications are reaping great benefits in terms of the work.
Now it's our pleasure to turn the rest of the presentation over to the MC extraordinaire and Director of People Personnel Services, Rachel Paul.
Well, I was able to practice at the SEPTA meeting, my skills this evening, so hopefully I can bring enlightenment to this group here about all of the efforts that we are really involved in ensuring that the district moves forward to this guiding question and towards this guiding question with success and attainable goals, right? This is something that is meaningful to the community. Our ENL population, non-English speaking population, has grown over the past year. You know, right now we have a family from Poland that's moving in, a family from Singapore that's moving here to Croton. So the demographic is definitely changing. So we need to be prepared to meet the demands of this growing population. So the Pupil Personnel Department oversees the ENL department, the English as a New Language department. So together with the ENL teachers from each of our schools, we've been working bi-monthly to ensure that we meet, we collaborate, and we share resources. So through these meetings, we brainstorm. It's like a professional learning community. So each teacher shares strategies. Everyone seems to have a connectedness to the family. So Janet Quato from CET knows the family, so she's able to relay information and partner with Catherine Ellenson to meet those students' needs as they progress through PVC and ultimately with Sarah Campbell at the high school. So that alignment and cohesiveness really helps the families feel comfortable and ensure that we're meeting their needs as throughout their K-12 education. So outside of the bi-weekly meetings, actually, the ENL teachers developed actions. So our goal was our primary focus. That guiding question was our primary focus. So together we collaborated to establish goals that are going to help us engage these non-English speaking families. So each teacher will review their goals as the presentation progresses. Additionally, community meet and greets. So the ENL representatives have been out in the community, Saturday mornings, meeting families, sharing information, answering questions, bringing back information to the district office and schools so that we can help support these families through our work. Additionally, think tank sessions. So the ENL department partnered with the PTAs to ensure that the PTAs and the district were aligned in how we're going to bring in and engage our non-English speaking families and support them. You know, it may not be through a formal event. It may be through these community meet and greets, our interactions in the community, in passing at the pickup line at school. So we want to ensure that everyone's voice is heard. And these representatives from the community and the district are ensuring that these families are represented here in the district. So as I mentioned, every ENL teacher developed outreach actions. So what efforts were they going to partake in over the course of the school year to ensure that our families are heard, they are welcomed and supported in the school community? So each teacher will go more in depth into their outreach actions. So PBC, they've worked, diligently in ensuring that there's someone available for parents at the parent-teacher conferences that is able to translate, pre-scheduling meetings across schools to ensure that there's availability of an interpreter and or translator at the event so that parents can be actively engaged and meaningfully participate in the education of their students. Additionally, we want to ensure that the parents understand and feel that we are encouraging a culture where the parent, teacher, and school are a unit. And to ensure success of our students, we need to ensure that we are all working together to support these students through their educational careers. The high school, we are seeing increased.
Before you get there,
Oh, yes, ma'am.
because you did kind of skip over CET.
She has a very lengthy slide that.
I saw you skip that. That's fine. Okay.
Thank you. I thought the questions were at the end. I'm becoming nervous. Okay, so as far as Croton High School, our goal this year is really to continue that and increase the efforts of ensuring that parents are involved in their students' education. They are present at both structured and unstructured, events within the school community. They're involved in mainstream events, which they're informed of through a newsletter from our ENL teacher, and ensure that supports are there for families. One thing that I've heard through my surveys and interactions with families is a lot of the parents want to learn English. So we're guiding them in the direction of English language classes in an adjacent town. But it's something that, we may want to consider in supporting them through maybe our parent university or some of the other efforts that we've engaged in throughout the school year. So family community network meeting. This is an excellent opportunity for us to highlight the collaboration amongst the community organizations. So we began meeting in the summer. So in August, a group of us came together, school representatives, the Croton the Croton Police Department, library, Croton Caring, the village, PTA representatives were here, the library. We also had one of the local churches, a representative that really has her finger on the pulse of the needs of our non-English speaking families. So we came together in that lower picture. That was our first meeting over the summer. We had a very good turnout. It was so meaningful to work with these other organizations to just really talk about what are you doing, what works, where do we see a need for improvement, how can we partner together to really bolster these efforts to ensure that we are providing the resources necessary to our families of non-English speaking families here. So our next step with community meet and greets. So this is 2 Saturday mornings. Both myself, an ENL teacher, an interpreter went out into the community. So we went to the Hudson Deli, which is on Grand Street, owned by the Purcell family, who's a family of CET student. And then we had another Saturday morning at Next to Go. So literally, I just set up a table outside of the store, had a little runner candy, flyers regarding our future facilities project, a needs-based survey, which was extremely helpful. And we really just engaged in a conversation, very informal. Parents were very open in what they needed, through this engagement, because I think they felt comfortable there and open enough to communicate either through a translator or just through, speaking to me and what their needs are and what they feel are the things that we are doing good as a school district and where they see a need. So it was very helpful in really hearing from them in the community. And that's something John alluded to. It can't just be school to home anymore. We need to be where the parents are. We need to be where the families are. I engaged with a bunch of parents that worked in that vicinity of Mexico on Riverside. Like, she was like, okay, I gotta go to work now. I said, okay, thank you for completing the survey. It was a great experience to meet the families. And I said, if you need anything, I gave them my card. So they've been reaching out to me. And I said, just be comfortable. If you need a liaison, you have your ENL teachers, you have me, just use us as a catalyst to help you engage in your child's learning. Okay, so some of the survey results were that air conditioning is needed at CET. She said, it gets very hot in there. And I said, I'm sure, I'm sure. Support and accessing the parent portal, which we will have some conversations later through our technology presentation. Some parents just said, everything's great. Everything my child needs, they're getting while in Croton, which, you know, that was a warm feeling. And that was really a thread, you know, through all of the conversations that I had. If there were just things that they needed a little bit of support with so that they could feel more engaged. College preparation information, classes for parents to learn English, more music programs, more after-school activities, more translators. So I'm comfortable coming to the school. Registration for sports programs in Spanish. Access to resources in the community, more books available in the child's native language. So as I was sitting there listening to parents and reviewing the survey results, I'm like, all of this stuff is kind of in our view. Like, we know these are needs. So I felt confident that, you know, that we can work towards, you know, ensuring that these needs are being met over the course of the year and in subsequent years. I'd like to introduce Dr. Jared Blair to speak about his efforts in technology.
So good evening, everyone. And with the support of Superintendent Walker, Assistant Superintendent Griffiths, and Assistant Superintendent Harrington Cohen, and my fellow administrative team, I view my role as the Director of Technology and Innovation a service-oriented role. It is through the lens of service leadership that I am here to support the integration of technology and innovation across all aspects of our district, and it's a true honor to fulfill this charge. As Rachel mentioned, through the feedback of the parent survey and our ENL instructional team, who interact with a daily basis with families whose primary language is not English, we notice a huge gap when it comes to the parent portal in Infinite Campus. As you know, we utilize Infinite Campus as our student information system, or SIS, which houses essential data surrounding our students and families. First implemented in the 2020-2021 school year, Infinite Campus offers access to a parent portal. Those of you who have portal accounts know that this is not the most user-friendly software. So through all of this feedback, we decided that it probably would be best if we offered a very thorough video walkthrough of the portal. So taking that in, I used the supreme talents of Greg Cavalieri in video editing, and we did a screencastify of a portal walkthrough. I felt like Vanna White, kind of guiding everybody through. I did that first in English, and then we used our translation services through BOCES to dub the video in Spanish, and that can be found via our parent student links section of the website. You can see in the upper left-hand corner, and it says parent portal. Infinite Campus, that top link will get you actually to the login page, but then the link below that, which is Infinite Campus how-to videos, that will then take you to the page where you'll see both of those panels where you'll be able to access the video in both English and in Spanish. So I definitely recommend it. It's only about 4 minutes, so it's not going to be too long. But again, this is providing equity and access to information. This is but one small fee, and we'll be taking a thorough evaluation of all of our technology platforms and finding other ways in which we can highlight this type of video walkthrough for some of our most commonly used platforms. I know one of them that has been brought up in the conversations is our athletics kind of portal and the family ID. So keep an eye out for that piece of it. You can go on to the next slide. And coming soon, preview extraordinaire, K-12 alerts, very antiquated platform. We are very happy that it's been such a stalwart component of our district, but it's time to move on. So I'm very pleased to announce that we'll be moving from the K-12 alerts platform this school year to Parent Square. So I'm going to say that company's name out loud, and we'll be doing a slow transition from K-12 alerts to Parent Square. As you can imagine, there are many aspects of K-12 alerts and all of the facets of the community that receive those alerts that have to be carefully educated on the platform, communication, solid communication in multiple languages on the platform. But a little about why we chose Parent Square. There are a multitude of platforms, but Parent Square has consistently been highlighted across the region and across the country and even internationally as a very solid platform. You can kind of see that on the side there, how Parent Square works. Teachers and staff share school-related news on Parent Square. Parents and guardians receive, respond, sign up, get automated reminders in their preferred language. So that's why we're highlighting this tonight. Once you select a language, as you can see in the larger panel on the left there, the communication that you receive in Parent Square will be in the language that you have selected. So that's very powerful in just streamlining communication platforms. What's really great about Parent Square as well is all of our buildings basically streamline their communication to this one platform. So if you have let's say you have 3 children, 1 in each building, you can take a look at the Parent Square platform and see all groups in one consistent space. And you can choose to receive these alerts via phone, via text, or via the email/app. So we also have an app that's associated with this. And we're hoping that the rollout of Parent Square highlights this district goal and enables equitable communications with a unified school home platform.
I just want to say in the interest of transparency and full disclosure that we also will use Parent Square like we do K-12 alerts to announce snow days. So I will commit to learning how to use Parent Square to do that as opposed to K-12 alerts. So I don't have to call John at 5 a.m. to announce snow day.
I love that call.
But don't be concerned, we will be rolling this out after.
I was gonna say, we're gonna wait
snow
until
season.
after snow to
Exactly,
roll this out.
exactly.
One
So
more winter of the calls.
we will, rest assured, we will clearly communicate our rollout plan and ensure that everyone has the ability to sign up. We'll be piloting and testing certain aspects of Parent Square before the most essential aspects of alerting, like a weather alert, actually roll out after this winter season.
Steve, if it makes you feel better, if he doesn't answer, you can call one of us.
Oh, good. All right. You're next on the list. All right.
I'm gonna stop
You're on the
Thanks,
coaching
Mike.
now. That's it.
John, with your new Jeep, I think we could ask you for a ride to work.
Before I introduce CET, I'd like to acknowledge 2 community members that have been integral in providing us with the information we need to really take on these initiatives and get out in the community and to meet the families. So Ms. Kenna Weiner, if you wouldn't mind coming up.
Yep, we're actually gonna go.
And Yoli Correa. So they are part of the think tank. We meet on Monday evenings, late. And we really just kind of brainstorm, what should we do next? You know, what have you heard the needs to be? So if you guys can speak to some of the things that you've been doing, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kenna Weiner,
And Yoli Correa.
and we are parents of kindergartners and second graders at CET. And we're also representatives from CET's PTA group, who's focusing on Spanish-speaking family outreach. We're focused on that because Spanish speakers are about 17% of this community.
So, Kenna, ¿sabías que mi hijo y tu hija tienen que llevar un animalito de peluche mañana a la escuela?
I'm sorry, Yoli, I have no idea what you just said.
I said it. Kenna, you know that my kid and your kid has to bring tomorrow to a stuffed animal to their class.
So that seems like a pretty simple request, but for a 5-year-old who doesn't bring a stuffed animal because they didn't get the information, their parent didn't get the information, it is the end of the world and they just have a really bad day that next day.
So, good night. Good evening. I'm sorry, I'm nervous.
Okay.
Yeah, since my kids started going to school, I noticed a kind of lack of communication between school and families who are not speak English. So I can say a lot of things, but I have a personal experience with this mom who doesn't speak English since pre-K. So my kid was going there, Tanya, and she crossed in the hallway and she said, "Do you know Spanish?" And I said, "Yes." So she said, "Can you help me to translate some stuff I don't understand?" And I said, "Look, I live here a lot, for 20 years, even my English is not so good, but I'm going to try to help you." And for me, the school system is new too, because I just have 2 kids here and I'm learning. So she said, my kid said that she has to bring a doll, but it wasn't a doll, it was a stuffed animal, and the kid was sad. So, and then she said, she called me and said, they have to go dressed nice, but I don't understand. I said, it is PJs that you have to bring your kid with pajamas. So that's why it made me kind of sad, and I want to try to help my community. I know this happened yesterday too. She called me and said, "Señora Yoli, can you help me with my daughter who is in the nursery and she has fever?" And I don't understand what the nurse says. She said something like she has fever, but I don't know how much. And I don't have nobody. Can you go there? And I went to school, I asked, and the nurse told me she has 102, and they called the mom, and I translate, and she said, "Thank you so much." And the nurse asked, "Can I give Tylenol?" And I said, no, please, can you give her in your house? So I bring the little girl to my house. That happened yesterday. So, and I was like, wow, I can do this. But not all the Spanish speakers can have a person who can help them. That's why it's like I have this woman who helps me a lot. And I know some people, they don't want to say it, they don't speak English. They are ashamed, so they are they don't want to talk that much, but they have this kind of problems. And I know we are almost 20% of Spanish community. And the most of us are able to help our kids, but I know some percent of these families, they can't. So we are here to present this situation to you guys and to find a way to help these families to improve the communication. Emails from teachers. I know English, I understand, but some of them not. Like tomorrow is, they have to dress the color of the houses, green. And I called Señora Blanca today and I said, your daughter has to dress in blue. So that's everything that's happening during these 2 or 3 months that we are at school. Almost 3, right? Sorry. And can I?
And then also part of our think tank sessions, we came up, it was suggested that a class specific liaison, sort of like someone like Yoli, but that was a personal relationship that was formed. So more of a formal class liaison that would be able to translate all communications on an as needed basis, and to especially focus on pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade, because that's when families are first entering the district and the students have the least amount of autonomy. Another thing is to have translation services at back to school nights, or any sort of performance, so that these families know that when they get there, they will be served and they will be able to understand and be part of the community. Also, as Rachel said, she focused on English as a new language for adults is really important for parents and for caregivers. And hopefully the district can work with a newly organized village volunteer group to offer ENL classes to anyone who's looking to either improve their skills or just be more involved and be able to communicate with their kids as they progress through the school district. We are so excited that our district is devoting resources towards improving the educational and community building experiences of all students in this district. Prioritizing outreach efforts is the difference between saying we are a district that values inclusion and being a district that values inclusion. Thank you so much.
They keep me on my toes on Monday nights. They do. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Carrie Bianchi and Ms. Janet Cueto up to speak towards the work Carrie E. Thompson is doing towards this district's guiding question.
So first of all, I would just like to say thank you so much for being involved and for taking this on and for sharing your experiences, because as the administrator in an elementary school, one of my biggest challenges is not having that personal connection and not being able to reach out on my own and have those valuable conversations, or not having parents who don't speak English be able to call me directly like any other parent would be able to. And so to work together and to have this as a focus just is very moving to me, and it's such a priority. That being said, it is with great pride that I am able to stand up here with Janet Cueto. Janet Cueto and I have worked together. This is our 11th year together. And when this question, this essential guiding question became a reality, it was not at all about us making a list of goals. It was about addressing a vision that has been developing in our building between the two of us for years. And we're really looking at this as an opportunity for us to collaborate and work together and actually see these results happening, because we now have such support of the district and the community. So this is just, it really, like, not to sound so corny, but it's like a dream come true for the two of us, because these are conversations we've been having for 11 years together. And so with great pride, I'm going to turn it over to Janet so she can talk about so many of the things that she has done, because this is a priority to her.
I also want to just address the incident with Señora Blanca. What's happening in our district is we do have L's that are, I can identify and say, okay, these families need translations, these families need help. But I also have the other side, the non-L's that have family members who are of Hispanic, they need translations. So in one of our outings to the community, I found out that Mrs. Blanca did need translations, so she's not on a list of translations, and she's through connections and through networking to being out there in the community, I'm able to find out, oh, I have someone else to add to my list. So she came to a conference this week, and I had a translator there for her. So once I know whether they're else or not, that you are in need, I go into action, and Carrie gives me all kinds of ideas and helps me get this done. So just know that I can manage the L's easily, but sometimes I don't know all of the children who are not classified as L's, and parents need this help. So I just want to start with that, but just know that we solved her problems, and we solved the teddy bear stuff and all kinds of stuff. So no crying babies, no crying children. So one of the things I want to tell you is that I am so happy that we are no longer leaving anyone behind. We have everyone joining us, everyone being part of this community, and everyone feeling comfortable. I think it is a very challenging job for the elementary school, because this is their first experience, and we have to make it work there so that the relationships continue throughout all the schools. So what we have done to encourage parents to come in through our doors and feel comfortable no matter what the situation is that we started with a survey. But my survey wasn't about, oh, what does your child like, what color, what do they do? My survey was about our services. Do you know what ENL is? Are we providing the services your child needs? Do they have the resources you need at home to provide the instruction that has to take place at home? Ask them, do you know what Infinite Campus is? And you will be very surprised with that response. Do you know that we send you a link for the Paw Patrol? Do you know that you have a website? So that survey gave us so much information that I was then able to go to my administrator, and then we had to go to the district and say, we need to do things. And it's not good enough to just translate. They also need to know how to do it. And that's why we decided videos. And also we have one more thing to worry about. We think they might be computer savvy, and they might not. So we're going to talk about that and how we're going to address that, because we think everybody's computer savvy, and no, not everyone is, including my dad. Now, so what we did also is we decided back to school. So for the back to school orientation, yes, I couldn't be in every classroom. So what I did was I offered the back to school marathon. I had appointments. I finished teaching at 2:15, 2:30 was my first appointment. I did back to school for every grade, had their slides, had the principal slide, translated everything. And if you were able to come at 2:35, you tell me, when is it best for you to come here? Because sometimes our 7 o'clock is not good for them. So they came with their children, they were in the back of the classroom, they were nice and quiet playing, and I had 4 parents, 3 parents, 2 parents. I was working all the way through for all the grades. Everybody came to the back to school. When I did the back to school, I included the E&L, and I talked about that, told them what was expected, what do you need, and that's how we've been able to reach parents. And I left them telling them, in November, you will receive a phone call for a parent teachers conference. Be ready. So they were. And one other thing we did was we talked about how can we help you to feel comfortable in our school? And they told us. And they actually said that we were doing pretty good. I said,
But I have to say, and with pride, that every single family of an ENL student attended a back to school night for the first time in all of the years that I've been at CET.
I also provided it for non-Ls. I had parents there that were not non-Ls and they needed my services. And by the way, they came to the welcome center and one family just came, the lady just sent them to my room. I said, okay, they weren't my student nor my parents. And I said, let's go. I had all the slides, so I was able to do it. So that is a way to engage them. That is a way to tell them we care. That is a way to tell them you are important and you also have a voice. So that's what we did at our school for the school and for orientation. And I called Ls and non-Ls. I made appointments. I sent reminders. I have the Remind app. So those who feel comfortable, I told them, how do you want me to communicate with you? If you want a reminder, I do that. I send paper reminders. I made phone calls. I did what I needed to do to make sure that parents came in for the parent teachers conferences. And I think we made it. I think we did it all. So another thing we do, of course, because I speak the language, I am able to translate for the nurse. I'm able to translate for the welcome center. I am able to translate for conferences. So not only do I have conferences for my own students, but I have conferences for other students that are not mine, and I provide those services at my school. Now, I don't speak Chinese. We do have a Chinese student, so then I make an arrangement to meet with the Chinese family when they are available, because they are not always available during the time frame that we have. So I will see them during a prep or in the afternoon or early in the morning. Another thing we're doing to build communication, and I think this is important, is we are also reaching out to teachers. I'm also letting teachers know, listen, if you have something going on in class that's important, let me know. For instance, today, the students needed a picture for the writing portfolio, something they were doing, and they were going to read their writing in 2nd grade, and they needed a picture to go along with whatever the story was. So I was able to reach out to those parents. They emailed me pictures, and we were able to put it into the PowerPoint. One of the things that I think is very disappointing is for a student to sit there and see everybody else with what they need, and they do not have it. And that has happened a lot in my building. No more does it happen, because I am on it and I refuse to make them feel different. Students know when we care, and it is important for me for them to know that they are important and they're not going to sit in a classroom sitting there with nothing to show. So we make it, Carrie and I make it a priority to make sure that everybody's taken care of in terms of pictures, stuffed animals. I mean, everything they need, we try to do, and we try to connect with the teachers too. So the teachers know in my building, reach out to me and let me know what you need, and I will be making phone calls. I will do anything we need to do to make sure that not only the parents, but the students have what they need. And we have a thing at CET that's called WIN, what I need. So I like to think of that in terms of the families too, what they need, because each individual family needs something different. Not every family is the same. Although they come from the Spanish-speaking background, they come with different educational needs. They come with different things that we need to be aware of. And one of the things we need to be aware of is that they want their children to succeed, but they do not know how to get them there. And it is my job at my school to make sure that I help them get there. So one of the things I'm doing is, because I found out they don't know how to get around our website, I'm training them to, I gave them a quick training on that orientation back to school day, but now I'm going to call them and make appointments at whatever time they want to teach them how to go into Infinite Campus, teach them how to go find their teachers on our school website. Not everything is translated, but I'm going to see what can be translated that's already permanently there for them to understand. One of the biggest problems we had was we had a new program for the Paw Patrol. All of the Hispanic, including my students, did not click the link. So I have to teach them, you click the link and this is what you need to do. I am planning, hopefully with the technology help, to have an area in my classroom where there is a computer for parents to use. I can show them how to get K-12, I guess that's gonna be out soon, but I will teach them how to
Don't
get
go
to
too
this-
much depth with that one now.
So I will teach them how to click onto the Paw Patrol. And one of the things that's happening with that is that that link is very short, 24 hours. So I can tell them, you're getting a link, but by the time I have to teach you, the link is gone. So I have to work some things out, but how can they be connected and engaged if they don't even have access to what they need? So I think teaching them, training them on the computer at whatever level they are, just them, and I don't want them to be highlighted. So it's gonna be private with each person with a computer, and whatever they need to learn, I want to teach them, because this is what's gonna help us to help their children to succeed. And I'll leave you with this. When the school year started, everything was on Infinite Campus. Many of my parents did not know what bus, what time, what teacher, what materials their children needed. And not because they didn't want to, but because they didn't know how to. So I am committed this year with great passion to help them to maneuver, to navigate all these wonderful websites we have and all these things that we take for granted that they know and they don't. So I'm gonna be committed to helping them find a way to engage in the school, because how can they engage if they don't know? So that is our goal for the rest of the year, to make sure they are informed, empowered, and aware and trained by this district to do what they can do to make sure that their little ones in our building succeed. And that in the future, they can look back and say, this was a great experience, not because of one teacher, but a team of players that made it possible. So I thank you so much for this time.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Michael Crockett and Ms. Catherine Ellenson up to speak to their initiatives and actions at PVC.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Go to the next slide, please. So when we look at this question, we did some thinking around it. And what I like about our guiding questions is they serve as a tool to reflect on the past, a tool to navigate the current state that we're in our school district, and also a tool to envision the future that we all want. And that is connecting back with those other questions there about what a future-driven school system looks like. And when we did our thinking, we used this question as like a rubric in a way to kind of assess what we do and to envision what we could do in the future. We broke it down into 4 areas that we'll be speaking about this evening. Our interactions with our students and their families, education of our students and their families, communication with our students and families, and the most important one, the relationships with our students and their family. And I say it's most important because really that's what we want. That is the bedrock and the foundational piece of engaging families, is to have a relationship with them for when, and what was really nice is this year, as I included in my board report, we had an unprecedented number of Spanish-speaking, not parents, families show up at our school. And I think that had something to do with they recognized the face in the morning when they dropped their kids off at school, you know, and it wasn't so awkward for me. I'm speaking. All right, Catherine, can we break this down?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening. So as we were mentioning, some of our goals include personalizing our communications with parents. So one thing that we did this year, that I did this year, was have the L's write letters home to mom and dad about parent-teacher conferences and say, you know, there's actually a picture coming up, but to say, this is what I'm excited about sharing with you in my classroom. These are the things that I've been working on. And I think mom and dad came in excited. They had questions already sort of prepared because they had an idea of what they were walking into. And when your child is excited about something, it makes you want to be involved. So we also have spending more time with students with home languages other than English. That's a long sentence for, you know, sometimes the student needs 5 minutes after class. It's been a hard class. A lot of these children have to process what we're saying once and then again in their native language, and then they have to output in English. That's a tremendous amount of work and it's tiring. So sometimes, you know, it's the few minutes that you can spend one-on-one with a student after class or throughout the day, or just a walk. Let's take a walk, let's chat, let's see how things are going.
I would also add that, you know, we talk about people as Spanish-speaking students, but these people come from a whole bunch of different cultures and countries. So getting to know the individual student is what's really important. What, you know, not just what country they come from, but what their family values, what their family structure is like, what time they go to bed. You know, things like that, that will help us work with them better. Sorry to interrupt.
No, please. We, to speak to that a little, we have a world map in my classroom, and all the students have pinned where their families are from. And they're from all different places, and we have arguments frequently about which place is the best place. And they, you know, so that they are a diverse group in and of themselves. And we just got a new student from Albania, so that's a lovely new addition. We have a whole different language, right, coming in here. So let's see. Oh, something we did last year was, this is the third bullet there, hosting events to provide students with positive role models. We had an event at the end of last year, was basically having professionals who were from other countries, who had come to the United States and created success stories for themselves. And a big part of why that's important is because then we have a panel of adults who are successful, they're entrepreneurs, they are educated, and they are doing well for themselves, and our kids can see themselves in these successful people. And it's so important that they have that as well. On the bottom here, there's a picture. I'm just going to reference a couple of these. So that was parent-teacher conference night. That table was originally covered with pictures that we had printed out. I actually left them for parents to feel free to pick up on their way out. The frames are, they're called Yes, I Can frames. So each student was asked to identify 5 positive things about themselves, and we have this on the wall now. So it's for that bad day, that day where you stub your toe in the morning, or when you come in and things aren't going quite right. And the parents were able to see what their kids are doing and to be a part of that as well. They were able to take some of the pictures home. And
So the reason why we think this is important to frame this through the interactions is the first interactions we have with any family is the interactions we have through with their children. And we want children to go home and tell their parents that they like school. They have a great teacher or great teachers. They know their principal, and everything at school has been welcoming. And I think that's why it's really important. And from there, we have something in common with the parent from the get-go, which is their child. Next slide, please.
okay, so here is the letter I was talking about earlier. This is your mom, very excited to be my teacher, etc. And we have increased outreach to parents by the email teacher. counselors, psychologists, and school administration. So this is a team effort, as we've heard from multiple people. We're all working together to make this happen. And there's an example of that on the side there. So these are some of the bilingual communications that are going out. Communication, that's a big one. So it's not just the parent teacher conferences or the back to school. These are very important events, but it's not just those events. It's the text that I get at, 11 o'clock in the morning that says, my son or daughter is having a hard day today. And these are texts in Spanish. Or, another language, but typically in Spanish because we have so many Spanish speaking students. And it's those pieces of this that are so important as well. The emails, the telephone calls, the times that parents also need our help. I always tell parents when they come in for meetings that we are here for your child, but we're here for you as well. We're all on the same team and we're all working toward the same endeavor, which is everybody's success.
So the nice thing is I think what is permeated throughout the culture of PVC Middle School is more teachers, if not all, are when they email home, they're translating those emails into Spanish. As you know, my weekly goes out in both English and Spanish. And I would also like to say that, when I have to make calls on the weekend, all right, let's say something happened or I get an alert on the computer that's child has accessed the website that they weren't. I have this live-in translator that's just the best, and so we're able to work that out as well. One of the things I'd also like to just add to this is to tell you how this year's back to school parent teacher, night was different than any others, and that is really, should be a real feather in the cap of Rachel DePaul, our school counselors, as well as Ms. Ellingson. Not only were there ample translators there, and what we couldn't get through our translation service, we were able to find in the community, right? Through our substitutes. Right now, we have 8 people on staff that speak Spanish, either proficiently or fluent. So to draw from those resources are really important. And, one day I come down the hallway, I hear a parent showed up, and one of our custodial staff is translating and talking with the parent. And that just shows you how it's culturally acceptable and the expectation that we're going to meet people where they are. What made this back to school night or the parent teacher conferences different was that we had a greeting section that, as I wrote in my board report, that was all Spanish speaking students. And I want you to keep that in mind when we talk about hosting events that make kids see, put kids in contact with community members who are Spanish speakers, who are also entrepreneurs, business owners, and so forth. Because this was high school kids who used to be our E&L kids, who are the shy kids, who are now showing leadership in a critical area at a critical time to welcome in another group of people and usher them into the same fold of our community. Next slide, please.
So on the side of this slide, we have pictures from that the Future is Yours event that I mentioned before, where we did have a panel of individuals come in, and as you can see on the bottom, all of the students had prepared questions that they wanted to ask, some of which were very interesting, some of which were very personal, like what was the hardest thing that you ever faced in your journey here. So as Michael mentioned, we did have a welcome committee at parent teacher conference night. We also, I was able to, thank you to Jared Blair, share with that a couple of those families that did come in, the video of how to access parent portal in Spanish. It was like the perfect timing, actually, that was posted. So thank you very much again. And then down here on the bottom, I'm just going to skip down here. It says empowering parents to support their child's learning and growth. So when I've spoken to parents, I've also spoken to parents about their own language proficiency and goals that they have for themselves. I have a mom who does Duolingo with her daughter nightly, and that's because she asked, what can I do to learn more English? We had an event at the Code Free Library, who they continue to be a wonderful resource and ally, where we had discussed, trying to find resources for parents to have conversational English classes, and these parents were excited. Of course, this was just pre-COVID, so we had all of these, ducks in a row, and then we know what happened, but these are all things that are still very much goals. I've actually a meeting with one of the newest members of the Thornton Free Library next week, and she was an ENL teacher for 10 years, so she's super pumped about next steps and what we're going to do. In the middle of this slide, there is a highlighted blurb, and I'll try to be brief here. This is a proposal for a summer program that I had come up with, and essentially this summer program built off of this event. And students were going to continue a project they've been working on in terms of their, own possible entrepreneurship skills and what they thought maybe their success story could be. And at the end of that project, parents would be invited to come in and participate. And that's such a huge deal because then everybody's involved and we are helping the entire family where we are a team at that point, which is the goal.
So the other thing we want to say about the education piece is educating parents and families about the resources available to them in our community. Obviously, we work with great partner organizations throughout our community, like Croton Cares, as well as our after-school program. There's been times where we were able to help families by getting their children's scholarships to the after-school program instead of having the child be at home alone or wander town. So those types of things are really important. Advocacy pieces that Catherine, myself, and the other members, teachers too, do at PVC Middle School to educate parents on what some of the options are for them and how we collectively raise their children. Next slide, please. Last one.
Okay, so here we
Just
have.
call it Rachel. I'm looking for the cane.
We have a repeat photo here in the middle. It's just such a great photo, lots of great faces. And all of our current,
Especially the guy in the red tie.
of course, right? All of the kids in this picture are current fifth graders. And this was the first time that I got to meet them. Actually, I think it was the second. But I got to go in and I got to sit down with them and eat with them and talk to them. Some of our kids, and not just our fifth graders, are very shy. It's a lot of work, as I mentioned, to process and then output, but also, cultures are different. And so they're navigating a tremendous amount. I would say I love the ENL classroom because there is no norm. We make our own, right? Because we're all so different. And so the kids were able to come into PVC on their first day, and there was a couple of familiar faces, but they got to start their day in a classroom with someone that they felt they already knew. So the continued partnership between schools, that longitudinal relationship, so between Janet Cueto and myself, and then Sarah Campbell, that's always an extremely important part of this, that smooth transition, those relationships that continue all the way through. And we have families with children in multiple schools. So it just makes sense that everybody is informed and works together.
And I have to say, attending that practice made a big difference for me because the first day of school, those kids felt like they knew me. And that was amazing. Plus with the ice cream, but in the summertime, but yeah.
For me, it was the empanadas.
The thing I really want to leave us here with is, obviously, again, I started by saying that one, relationships are really important. And two, that we have to use that question to envision a future. So how do we know that we're making progress in this area? And I came up with a metric that I wish to share with you. Obviously, a lot of discussion surrounds how we're going to help people. But I think it ends up somewhere where we know we're hitting the mark when these people that we're helping become resources of our community themselves, right? When instead of having the kids listen to stories of successful community members, their parents are telling those stories. And that's why we're thinking in the future to move in that direction. I also think that when you go out, like Rachel said, and you visit the business that they own, or you go to the home and you say, hey, Billy's been sick, for a few days, anything I could get you. Those things pay off in dividends because now people know that they can trust you and they can call you and they can rely upon you. And sometimes it's very helpful to know that, that single mom or single dad can pick up the phone at any time and call me, Catherine, the school councils, Ms. Kelly, and so forth. I think this is the most important thing, is to have that relationship. That's our piece for this evening. Thank you.
Great things happening here, guys. So this, it's not all new, but we're refining and we're hyper focused on what we're doing now. So next, I'd like to invite Ms. Sarah Campbell, Mr. Mark Maxim, and Ms. Erica Fiorini from the high school to speak to what the goings on here at the high school.
I'm going to turn this over pretty quickly to Sarah, because she's the real star of this show. But you know, we have a real commitment at the high school, as all the buildings, to really work on this. And it's not a new project for us. Sarah has been leading this show for quite a while and has a lot of great things that we're building on and making some real efforts to build on this year. So I'll let Sarah start, and then we're going to add in.
So my name is Sarah Campbell, and I came here in 2014. And when I first came, I was split between PVC and the high school, and I spent 5 years in that split position. Then I went on sabbatical and maternity leave, and Ms. Ellingson came, and when I came back, the biggest difference was hiring Ms. Ellingson permanently, which I think that, thank you so much, because we are now able to fully service this population. Also, I'll note, when I first came here, I only had 3 students at the high school and about 8 or 9 at the middle school. And now that's, we're at 15 at the high school. And how many do you have? About 20 at the middle school. So I think, Mr. Walker, you mentioned working as an island for a long time. I think that's natural when there's such a small population, but it is growing. So it is time to pop out of the shadows a little bit. Just like Ms. Cueto and Ms. Ellingson said, we do quite a lot all year round. Any moment, any day, we're translating for nurses, calling home, connecting families with resources, meetings. I mean, just last week, I had a parent come into school so we could sit down and work on how do I access Google Classroom. Very much my style is to sit down. If they can't come during the school day, we'll meet at Baked by Susan or Black Cow on a weekend, have coffee. All my families even know my toddler, who then comes on Saturday morning with me to Baked by Susan, and she gets a cookie or whatever. But that's very much my style. So we're doing all these formal things, but there very much is the informal aspect of, we're just going to pick up the phone and give Ms. Campbell a call. I just wanted to share some pictures, because one of those informal things is, like Ms. Ellingson said, going and visiting restaurants to where, you know, at the high school level, my students are working, right? So we're eating at the Yorktown Diner on Veterans Day last weekend. Gracie got a cookie, you know, to support my parents. Going to the Chinese restaurant in town to support, you know, my husband and I eat wherever my students are working. So we eat at a lot of the same 7 restaurants. I do, you know, over the years we've held events, culture events. Last year I switched, since now we're full-time here. I had a graduation barbecue for my learners who, you know, to honor the seniors who are graduating. Selah by Literacy, Ms. Fiorini will talk more about that, but I bring the families in for Selah by Literacy presentations. And one aspect, which I think is cultural and also unique to the high school, is our field trips are often exciting and a little unusual for some other cultures. For example, Hershey Park, the boat dance. I've had plenty of parents call me up and say, I'm not letting them go unless you go, Ms. Campbell. So over the years, I've definitely invited myself to every prom and every boat dance and every Hershey Park trip to give my parents that peace of mind. And I enjoy being a resource for those kids at prom if they don't have anyone to dance with and they need to come sit with Ms. Campbell, whatever. So that's something that I really enjoy doing too. And also a benefit of the high school, sometimes we'll just go get ice cream on a random Tuesday if they've worked really hard. But I really prioritize those relationships with the parents and the students. And of course, doing things like going to basketball games and all those kind of things. One other aspect, we're not here to discuss too much instruction, but I have also worked hard to intertwine and foster communications within the students and the families at home and encourage students to bring that information or share those conversations with me and within the classroom, which I think is a unique way of opening up that line of communication. So how can we integrate the students and what they know? What are the knowledge? They're not just empty vessels that come to us. They come to us with a skill. So how can we incorporate that into our instruction? Some projects that I have done also to get the students' stories out there to help them integrate and get into the general population. I've made partnerships with, for example, an art class where the advanced art students with Ms. Berger, they interviewed my students, we recorded the conversations, they went back and worked so hard on biographical portraits of my learners, which is a really fun partnership to get the students' stories out there. I am frequently having students make multimodal videos at home with their families. For example, cooking videos. The one that I wrote in my board about an hour ago was make a short or a Instagram reel, not on Instagram, but just emailing me the video, but make a short of, you know, what you did at Thanksgiving. So take pictures when the turkey comes out of the oven and all these things. So I try and work to bring aspects of the family into the classroom in these ways. And also the picture shows, we also partnered one time with the FLES program at CDT, but I really try and ask myself, how can we, what family values, practices, and norms can we include in our school in our instruction, which I think is an important question to ask as well. You know, in addition to those formal events that I listed out in the calendar, what kind of formal communication am I doing with each month, basically, that little timeline. I've spent a lot of time with these families, and especially being grades 5 through 12 for so long. I have some seniors right now who I've had since 5th grade. And same with last year, I had graduating seniors who I've taught since they were little itty bitty babies, and even Janet Cato had. So I think, in talking to my parents, one of the response of like, why don't you come to the open house is, well, I just know that you're taking care of everything, which I think is valid. You know, I got you on speed dial, Ms. Campbell. Another phenomenon that I've experienced a few times is, for the open house, they will come sometimes, and then they'll come up to my room and skip the big auditorium. They don't want to do the big scary event, even if there's a translator there, and they'll just kind of scurry on to my little box on the 3rd floor and we'll talk privately. So I will say that these big events are a bit intimidating for them. And I did at one point, and I'm going to do it again in December, is sit down and record conversations, lengthy, in-depth conversations with a few parents that I know very well, to really dive into what can we do better. So I did that a few years ago, and I'm about to do it again. But some themes that came out were that, again, they enjoyed private meetings with the teachers. The big open houses can be daunting. And also the conferences can be a bit rushed, right? Even for anyone. In regards to the community, I found this quote to be really interesting. So vemos corazones no sabemos. So we see the hearts we don't know, or we see the smiles but we don't know the hearts. And I think I do help bridge that and help provide just a stepping stone to help them get more familiar with the community. When speaking with the students on this, I again recently had a conversation that I recorded with permission. We got the signatures, we're all good, but recorded with permission. And I asked, what can you tell me? What can we do better from the student's perspective? And of course, if I'm at high school, it's a different response than the kindergartners, right? And, sometimes it's good. This quote right here, be good, be how you are, that's fine. And then others, I didn't put a quote there because it was very personal, but another perspective was, man, integration is hard for everyone. It's hard for me, it's hard for mom. You come here from out of country, like we don't have friends. I don't have friends, my mom doesn't have friends. It's just, integration, moving to a very tight-knit, small community is difficult if all these grupitos, if all these groups are already existing. One difference for this year, I've always called home and said, hey, please register for conferences. And of course they don't, because the systems are scary. So this year, I called and I actually scheduled them, and it was great. I made these little appointment cards for them, passed them out about 14 times before the conference came. So I will say 100% of the families were scheduled, and we had 12 out of 13 come. So we just had one no-show, which I think is pretty good.
That's huge. That's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah.
That nearly perfect attendance of our ELS, English language learners, to conferences. That's super. So
Yeah,
really,
so I think it really
that's a
is the
huge
system,
difference.
because I was calling home before, but I think it's just having the appointment
But
card.
it speaks to how the system itself is limited.
Yes,
Right? Like you
yes.
can say, oh, there's conferences, but that doesn't make it easy for someone who doesn't speak English just to get on the computer and sign up for the conference. It's obviously not happening. So, but when it was facilitated,
Mhm.
here we have near 100% attendance. It's super.
Yeah, yeah. So this is just a sample of what my schedule looked like. I definitely got on my steps. I love translating for my families. I don't mind it one bit. Like, I want the nurse to be like, hey, Miss Campbell, call home, because there's probably something else I gotta talk to mom about anyway. So I really don't mind the translation. One downside is there is not enough time for everything. So if you imagine I've got 8 classes times all these kids, so art might have gotten cut here and there, or I didn't hold a single conference with my own children, so that's a separate conference that I'll be bringing them in for, to talk about the ESL, all things ESL. So that, pluses and minuses. So, and I would like, what can we do as a district to, help assist the parent initiative?
Right, so one thing that I'm noticing and listening to everyone speak tonight is that when we know better, we can do better. And it's easy to feel discouraged thinking about maybe that child in the past who didn't have the thing that they needed to get to school, to bring to school. But when we know these things, we can move forward into the future and do better. And I think that that's really uplifting. And so one of the things that we've been working on here for the last 5 years is the New York State Schools by Literacy. And this was something I think that Sarah actually brought to us. So she was at the helm of this ship when we started, and Susan Bree played a big role in it as well. And this is going back to 2017. And the Seal of Biliteracy is to recognize students who are proficient in more than one language. And that includes literacy skills, right? It's not just speaking, but it's all 4 strands of speaking and listening, both receptive and expressive language. And so you can see on the timeline that when we started in 2017, it was in February, and that June, we had 2 graduates from our ENL program, and their primary language was Russian and Portuguese. And they were able to put together portfolios to demonstrate their ability to be proficient in both of these languages. This continued on after we were able to research and to get together these rubrics. It required an application to the state. So it was a big undertaking. And you can see on the timeline that as we went along, we were also now incorporating not only ENL students, but our students here whose English is their primary language, but who also have reached a certain level in usually it is either Spanish or French here at the high school. So we were able to incorporate both departments, the ENL department as well as the world language department. And what's very exciting about this is that it encourages kids to pursue another language. It's another accolade for them, but it's also honoring those students who are demonstrating their ability to speak two languages. How difficult is that? And they're coming here, and not only are they reaching this level, but they're also adjusting to a new culture, a new environment. And it's honoring their skills. It's easy, for people to point out deficiencies and some of the struggles that they have in academic classes, but look at this wonderful thing that they're accomplishing, and they are given credit for that. It also calls upon the community to sit on interview panels, because we need people to evaluate them in their speaking and as they present their portfolios. And that, to me, is a celebration of language, right? We're saying we value these cultures and we value these languages, and we're inviting our community members into the building. So we've done this for 5 years, and now we're ready for phase 2, which is now to attract heritage speakers. We have students who may be studying a language outside of these 4 walls, or they're hearing it at home. They're not in an AP class here at the high school, or they're not classified ENL students, but they speak another language. Why not bring those students in to be able to pursue this seal as well? So that means increasing access and awareness. So we are now advertising for this. There's daily announcements. It's going home tomorrow as well in Dr. Dubak's newsletter. So families are aware of this, and students are being told, hey, if you're speaking more than one language, we want to honor that. We want to help you to build that skill. We also have students coming up that speak Albanian, Dutch, Norwegian, and today I actually ordered an exam for American Sign Language, so we can honor that as well. So it does require some creative thinking and research in trying to figure out how we can help these students to meet the requirements of the portfolio and of this entire project. So we need to support them in doing that. So we're starting when they're younger, right? It's going out to 9th graders. Let's get you prepared. We can take this test that you may need when you're in 10th grade. We don't need to wait until senior year. So we're excited for phase 2 of the Seal of Biliteracy, and hoping that we're able to attract more students into this program.
In terms of honoring for that too, that's something that is an actual physical seal on the diploma. It's also listed on the transcript. We list it in the graduation program. It's designated, and it's something that a student can put on a resume. So
Yes.
actually show it off. So there's a fair amount of recognition that's there, but it's something that stays with the student because this is part of their graduation diploma.
Be proud of. The second thing that I'd like to talk to you about is our classes here at the high school. A new class this year is Introduction to Spanish Language and Literature. And this is a way for us to have a place for those students who are hearing and speaking Spanish on a regular basis, perhaps at home, but their literacy skills in those language are not necessarily developed. It's kind of like if English is your first language, taking a course to learn how to speak English is a lot different than taking a course in the English literature and writing. So Muncie Bayinalosa, I just completely butchered her name, but she is teaching this class, and it's to attract heritage speakers. So this is not a course necessarily to teach them the language, although they are practicing and refining. It's also a celebration of their culture. They're keeping like journal entries about their lives. The project here is the story of their life, where they're looking at their own culture, learning about it, and being able to practice those literacy skills. So they do have a full use of their language and not just listening at home or being able to speak with their parents. So this is an exciting addition because those students are not going to take a level 1 Spanish course, right? It's not a place for them where they feel valued. They look around and think like, I already know this. Why are you making me sit through this, instead of flourishing in a class such as this new language and literature class.
Can I just add, if you dive into language acquisition and linguistic research, the stronger the first language, the stronger the second language. So if you have a child, on the rare occasion where we do have a long-term L, every single instance that they have very poor literacy skills in their native language. The native language, if it's not set, if it's not secure, it truly affects their English language learning as well. So my philosophy, and the research would back me up, is that quality versus over quantity. So my belief is, let's really hone in on this skill. You have a gift that you are bilingual. Let's improve that. Because if any one of us were to move to, I don't know, China, wherever we might go, we would want our own personal children to continue developing in English, right? We still want them to be reading and writing in your own native language. So this is something that I really, really have campaigned for a long time.
And it's amazing to visit that class, and some of the students who may not be the shining stars in other classes that you observe, when you go in there, you see a whole new side of them. And they're enjoying it, and they're able to show off and really do well, which is great to see.
And she's pushing them. Really pushing them to learn. When I went in there, I was assigned a translator. So sit next to me and tell me what was happening. And he did a really nice job.
The other class is the Collaborative Regions Earth Science class that we're offering this year. Something we've noticed with our ENL students in the past is when we're getting close to graduation, they're missing, say, their science regents exam. And as we know, they need that 4+1, they need a science exam. And partly it's because the technical academic language that is necessary to be able to be successful in something like a science course, it's difficult for them. And, you know, whether we're offering living environments or biology, a lot of them, though, are able to take earth science with the support that can be given. So this class is taught by Ray Ferrara, and Sarah Campbell is in there as an ESL teacher, and Kelly Ingram Friedman is in there as a special education teacher. And they're there to support the students to help Ray with his lessons and modifications. And also, as you, when I was up there the other day, this picture here of Sarah, we could see Ray at the front of the room, he was teaching, and when it was time to start working or sharing with somebody nearby, she's jumping around from seat to seat to be able to talk to those students, to check in. And through that building of the academic language and having that resource of a person who's sitting in the class with you, then carrying over to her periods later on when she sees them, it's a much smoother way to instruct the students. And we're hoping by putting all of the support into this one class that we will see the results of these students being able to pass that Regents exam in June. And she's done this before with English classes as well, but this is the first time for science.
And I'm going to speak about our last slide here. One of the things that came up in the survey, if you recall, was access about or information about college programs, right? So this is one of the ways that we're working to address this. There's an organization right here in Westchester County called Latino U College Access. They go by LUCA now, formerly just Latino U. They have full partnerships with 6 districts in Westchester County, all of whom have higher than 50% population Hispanic population, but they have been growing steadily over years, and are when I reached out to them this year. And I've had a connection for many years with them as well through Pace University, where my wife works and works closely with that. But when I reached out to them this year, their expansion, they're able and willing to start working with districts that have smaller populations. And our population, as you know, has been growing. And when you look at it now, we're close to 20% a Hispanic population in this district, which is important. So what do? They're working in a number of areas, but one of the key things that we hope to access is college programs led by Spanish speakers for Spanish speaking families. So we are working with them to set up an evening program this spring, which is going to be about the college process, and really can be open to all ages and families. But will be targeted toward high school ages and families. And they'll work with families about how to go through the whole process. And that's meant to be information providing and support, but then also lead into something that we're going to do this fall for older high school students. They actually they do another presentation on applying to college and working on the financial aid portion of college. So how to pay for college, how to apply how to do the FAFSA. And again, their programs are led by Spanish speakers. So that's what's really great about it. When you start working with them, you gain access also to some of their other programs for our families. And they have an outstanding program called the Scholars Program, where it's by application only. They have 100 places for this coming year. And in the Scholars Program, they start working, if a student gets accepted into that program, they work with them from their junior year of high school all the way through college. So it's a support program. They help them beginning junior year to research colleges, apply for financial aid, and then give them the support network and mentorship all the way through college to jump those hurdles that often result in the college statistics that they research and know that nationwide, it's over 80% of Latino students do not complete college. That's 80% of students who start college don't finish it. And that's a much higher number than other populations. But that's because of the challenges that they face at college.
So this is another instance too, where there is a great population where they're non-L families. So that if there's an L family, the counselor and I'll sit down, we do the FAFSA, we'll walk them through it. But what about those families who are non-Ls, but still Spanish speakers? And I think this really targets that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, someone doesn't have to be an L to be
need
a
these
part,
services.
to need it and to be a part of it. So this is something that we hope we can connect some of our families with. That particular program, it's a program that students apply for, and they're choosing the strongest academics for those programs. But what the latest class of 75 that they just picked up this last year, the average cost to college for those kids was $3,000 a year. And that's because of the amount of scholarships they were able to get. Those kids, with the majority of them getting full rides. So. All right, I think that's it for us.
So through work, conversation, collaboration, we've identified some future considerations that we're going to be working diligently towards for the remainder of this year and subsequent years. So first is a community liaison, someone to be an outreach worker almost between the school community and the populations that we're hoping to target and engage in the school community. Translation of daily communication from teachers, mass interpretation equipment for schools. So I had a very lovely diagram here One of my colleagues had said it looked like the doctor bag from Little House on the Prairie, and that we should remove it so that I could do more of a definition and explanation of it. So mass interpretation equipment for schools. It is a headset and a microphone worn by the translator. Those in the audience who require translation will have a receiver and another set of headphones. So they will get the translation during an assembly at the school, right from the seats integrated within the parent population. So it's a very nice way to engage those families and having them feel integrated instead of isolated and having that same information turnkeyed in a separate location with a translator. So they're able to sit in the population, in the audience, and receive that translation live with everyone else.
That was Dr. Baker from Little House on the Prairie.
Dr. Baker from Little House on the Prairie, sorry. Through our collaboration with the Family Community Network, we are establishing a community resource directory. So we will have the access to that directory on the district website. So our plan is to establish buckets almost, families that require financial support. We know that it could be linked to one of the local agencies or directed to a county organization that can support them. Food insecurity. There'll be a link to the application process or contact information for Croton Caring. Need for winter jackets. So we're trying to establish a very user-friendly webpage so that all of the resources in the community and surrounding communities are accessible and visible to our families here in the community. Office hours. Our ENL teachers have already established a very fluid and loose schedule where they are able to contact and communicate with families. The district office will also be establishing office hours to have access to a translator, and that will be the time when our families that have concerns, maybe that need to be elevated to the district level, can be, and then one of us will be there to man the phone during that time. PTA subcommittees. So through my involvement and engagement in the community at the community meet and greets, some of the families had expressed an interest in being a part of the PTA, but they felt uncomfortable in the larger scope of the PTA. So they were hoping to establish like a little cohort almost of Spanish-speaking families, so their needs and information can be relayed to the broader PTA organization. Additionally, parent universities, through the SELC, the Social Emotional Learning Committee, we have parent universities. This year we'll be providing translated versions of our workshops as well. And ENL Family Academies, Ms. Ellingson had alluded to her summer program that she had developed. So we're hoping that we could really provide our families with opportunities to collaborate and learn alongside their students over the upcoming year. That is it.
Before we launch into questions, because I'm sure some of my my board colleagues will have questions, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for joining us tonight and presenting with us. This was a wonderful presentation, and it's really incredible to hear all of the work that has been going and is evolving and is continuing to grow in our district so that we can support all of our students. So thank you so much for joining us and presenting to us. And now I will open up to questions. Josh.
So I echo what Sarah said. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the hard work that's gone into what we're doing already. And thank you for enumerating some of these future considerations. The biggest question that I have is, what do you need from us to make it even bigger? What would you, in an ideal world, what would you be doing? What would you need in the way of support from, now, obviously we need to think about budget, right? Like, what are the things that you'd like to be doing that you feel constrained about?
Can we hear from the ENL?
Yeah.
Would anyone like to add? Be honest.
Yes,
this is
absolutely.
I really feel that they need the headset equipment so that they can be integrated into the population and perhaps slowly get them used to being in the big groups, because if you notice from the conversation, they feel comfortable in a classroom, they feel comfortable with us, but not with the rest of the population. So I think it is the job of the district to help them sort of like be buddies with the other parents as well. And I think if we provide them with the equipment for them to be able to listen to the information at the same time as everyone else, it will bridge that gap we have right now. Another thing I think that's important is to make sure that when they enter our district, they are received in a way that helps us to accomplish these things. So we need to have not a greeter, but they need the information that's so important for them to help them to navigate this new world they're entering. So it is important for us to probably spend a little bit of the money we have on the equipment that's going to help with the translation first, and then we can work on the other things a little bit at a time. But in engaging the parents, they need to understand what is it that the district is communicating to them? What is the expectations that we have for them as parents? This is very different than in their home town where they're not pajamas parties, for instance. That is very different and very foreign to us to wear pajamas to school. To this day, if you tell my father to put pajamas on, my siblings would say, he would say, what? So we have to help them understand the culture of our community and of our schools. So if we have those headsets, that's the beginning of it. And then the other thing is to make sure we have translators, not just in Spanish, because we don't only have Spanish speakers. We have Polish speakers, we have Chinese, to make sure we have those people ready for when we receive the families, because we never know when we have them, but if we have these hours and we have that set up, it's a way to tell them, welcome. We're here for you. You're also part of our community. Right now, I think they don't feel like part of our community, as you can well see if they come into a little room to hear it, if they don't want to go to a overtime. So I think they're sending us the message loud and clear. We just need to hear it and act on it and put it in plan action. So I think we should start with that. The second thing I think we should do is also educate our workers, the people who teach them, to know these differences, because it's well enough for us to say it here and for us to understand it. But I think all of us need to, as a team, to understand the cultures we're dealing with and the differences, because a lot of this is foreign to a lot of the educators. They don't understand a lot of the discussions we've had here today, how they feel, how they're viewed. And children know how we feel and how we view them. And parents know very well how we view them and how we feel about them. And they have made it very clear. So I've had to, and I'll be very honest, I have had to iron a lot of things out of my school at times because of the relationships, not with me, not with my administrators, but with the teachers that do not understand the cultural differences. So I think we need to polish up on that as well. And if we're going to bring programs into our school, we need to know that there's a component, not just in Spanish, but in all of the languages that we are representing at this time in this district. And they're here, and we need to provide as best as we can what they need. Can we provide everything? Absolutely not. But those essential things that will make it better for them to function within this community and to function within our school system. There's a lot of information going out and a lot of links. And I'm on the phone, sometimes it's 10 o'clock at night, sometimes I get emails and texts at all hours of the day. And it shows that we're not communicating well with them. If we are on the phone and we are at the restaurants and we are, wear your pajamas, wear your blue color, if we're doing that, that means we're not reaching them. So I think we should start with the translations. We should start with making sure that when they come here, these are the things that we do here. These are some of the things you're going to have to do. And it's like when you go to your own children's things, when you go for anything, a parent thing, because we're all having older, it's the same thing where they give you the information you need to make it possible. So I think if we start with the translations and we start with making them feel like part of the community, I think we'll be on our way to doing the work.
I'm sorry. As I just wanna support that idea and said, as a Spanish, I have to do kids who were born here. But I know a lot of families who came here and the kids are already 9 years, 10. The transition for them are hard than that my kids who were born here. My kids going to preschool here, pre-K. So they are part of this country already. And I have the opportunity to say, Spanish people are very hard to break those walls when they are very family. They don't want it to be intimidated. They feel like that. So we have to find that way to get to them in order them to feel they are part of the community, not just sending kids to school and not be part of it. That's why it's like, I want them to feel like they are part of the community, not just sending kids to the school and that's all. And I feel like sometimes with my hands tied because I would love to help more, but they are hard to get sometimes. And then we have to find a way. And what she said is that we have to reach a better way.
Thank you. So I echo the appreciation that has been said just about the presentation and all of the work that you are all in the district doing to lift up our young people, our ELL students and their families, and limited English proficient families in the district. I moved to this country when I was 4 years old, and so I had a little bit of the experience of not knowing the language. I don't remember it at all, but I know that it was educators that really gave me the opportunity to enter into a new environment and be supported. People like Ms. Cueto, right, that really supported my family when we first came to this country, and my sister, and I credit them for, helping us be where we are today, my sister and I where we are today. So huge appreciation. It's a very personal issue for me, and I know it is. It's very clear that it's a priority for the district to do this work, and the recognition that there's room for improvement and there's a desire to improve. So that's been extremely heartening from tonight's discussion. Just one piece on what Ms. Cueto was saying on the interpretation equipment piece and this kind of use of technology, which I fully support. At my day job, we often use interpretation equipment because of its, it just makes things a lot easier. These large gatherings, people are able to participate fully. Simultaneous interpretation is extremely difficult. I've tried it myself. I'm not a professional interpreter, and it's not something that a teacher can just jump in and do. And so along with the equipment, I think is real investment in professional interpreters who can do that job. When people are speaking very fast and using terminology that's difficult and all of that. So, and then I think other tools, there are things like language lines that, do telephonic interpretation that can be used as tools as well. And so there's a lot of kind of technological things that make things easier. But kind of on the other side of the coin, I think technology can definitely be a piece of the solution, but also is sometimes incomplete, right? We know things like, and I always think about things like Google Translate, right? That actually used to not be very good at all, has improved a lot, but is still not perfect, right? There's still ways in which, I was actually looking at the website, and there is a functionality to translate the web page, and it's using Google Translate, and it just doesn't work because for some reason Google is not translating the web page at all. And in other web pages, when I've seen it done, some of the headings are translated correctly, but a lot of the actual content is just incorrect, right? So I think there's definitely a need for the human element, right, to make sure things are working and accurate. And yeah, I mean, the only other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, I don't, and we may have one, but I don't know if the district has a language access plan. Just like a document that kind of details details how the district does a couple of key things. And this is something that state agencies are actually required to do. So I have the like DMV's language access plan, right? They have to have a plan of how they're going to deal with understanding who the LEP, the limited English proficient population, is in their areas and their service areas, how they're going to notify the public about language access services, what resources and methods they use to provide language services, how you train your staff, right, about the accessibility of language, accessibility tools, and how you monitor language access services and the quality of those services, right? So I don't know if it's something that the district has ever taken on before, what it looks like. So, but I think that the nice thing about these is that it is a framework, understanding that that different schools are going to face different challenges or dynamics and are adaptable to also kind of make room for kind of the unique needs of the schools, right? Depending on whether it's a high school, PBC, or CET. So if there is one, I'd love to see it. If there isn't one, I feel like it should be a priority of the board and the district to dig into.
Yeah. So I wrote down a lot of questions. And when Janet started speaking, she talked to a lot of those questions and a lot of those areas that I noted. So I thank you, Janet, and your colleagues for really thinking about this and really thinking about all of our students. A couple of observations I have. First, I noticed, because I'm this policy person, and years ago, I had talked with Rachel's predecessor about the new Part 154 reporting regulations and requirements, which I happened to pull up. And just looking at the framework, the blueprint, I think what you have described meets everything that has talked about that SED has put out as what is the blueprint for providing ELL education. There is something which is a report that is supposed to be filed. Yeah. But there's an update that's supposed to be filed by January 31st, 2023. That's an update of the SEEP, right? And that is available. I don't know if the SEEP, because I can't access that document here, answers the kinds of questions that Theo talked about. I hope it does, because I hope that's the kinds of things that state ed is looking at districts to do, and that is a document that's publicly available. It's supposed to be available in the district office, and probably should be available in other forms, like on the website, so that we can all see what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're doing to meet the requirements and exceed the requirements. A couple of observations, or a couple of thoughts. And something that Janet, I think it was Janet said, that really struck me, which is thinking about students who are in a Gen Ed class whose native language is not English, and they're learning or they're being taught in English. And then they have to process into their native language. And it's, I think, Jen, you said it's very tiring. I think
It was Campbell. It was Campbell.
No.
It was
Campbell. Okay, somebody said it. And the fact that teachers, in terms of designing lessons, in giving lessons, and in developing the ways for students to work together, may not have the cognition of that. So when you talk about resources in Josh's question, one of the things that I would say probably should be added to that list of future considerations is professional development for our gen ed and special ed teachers to really understand that dynamic of serving ELL students. And so if you would consider adding that to future considerations, and when you talk about resources, when we are talking in a couple of months about budget and resources, that would be something that I think would be very, very worth considering. The other thing is in terms of community liaison. When we were at the State School Board Association convention a couple of weeks ago, we heard a presentation, Superintendent Walker and I, by two neighboring districts, right? Peekskill and Austin, who have predominantly or majority Hispanic population, student population, and they talked about some of the programs that they have to bring parents in. Their family resource center in Peekskill. I'm not sure, I don't know exactly what it was that Ray did, but there were things. And the point being that in thinking of resources and thinking of ties with those groups that Rachel, you talked about, police, library, urban caring, and so on, to really develop something that is more, and I hate this word, I'm going to say it anyway, holistic among the community, and to bring families in. And by the way, one of the things that the superintendent in Peekskill said is that they have a Saturday academy, where once a month they invite the community in, predominantly Hispanic speaking community, to do things, parents, students, art projects, music, whatever. And they provide food, and they get a lot of people who come, but they he was very proud to say, not only the Hispanic families, but other families as well, because we're talking about, and I know the PTAs are talking about, and we're talking about large group meetings, connections. We would like to have connections, or I would like to have connections with those community members, not just in school or through school, but even more broadly, connections within our community. And I think that's something that some of these things and the resource issue, as Josh pointed out, may be, something we got to consider, but those are things that I think we, however we can do it, should be working towards.
May I respond to Theo and then respond to you? Thank you. So Theo, you had mentioned about utilizing a certified translator, because it's very difficult to kind of parallel, hear the main presenter and then translation. So what we have access to, or who we have access to now, are staff members that speak a language other than English. They're our most immediate resource. Their availability is a lot, easier to identify and access to them. Outside of that, we utilize BOCES. They have certified translators that they will come and function as an interpreter for families during CSE meetings, any type of hearing or anything of that nature. But it's very difficult to secure those certified translators for after-school events and/or events outside of the workday. So we're using those staff members or community members that speak a language other than English. Additionally, in the spring of last year, we looked at what you had referred to as a language line, almost like a relay service. So we did receive a proposal. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive resource. And there were a lot of minimum minutes, that needed to be, it was, even if a nurse had to call and say, do you mind coming to pick up Sonia? She has a fever. They relay it in the family in their native language. There was a 15-minute minimum. There was a retainer fee attached. So it was a very intricate proposal and commitment from the district. So that's why it's still something that we're looking into, but we're looking to see what type of almost low-tech options we could access, so that we can build that level of self-sufficiency, almost in the schools. But it's not something that we haven't considered and or looked into, but it's an option that we still have.
If I could interject, I have used those occasionally in legal proceedings. And I have found that they don't always work so well once you get anything out of the very basic kind of communication. They really have difficulty translating.
Yeah.
And so that is another problem.
Additionally, in communicating with the ENL teachers, we're trying to identify ideal times to provide opportunities to parents. You know, so looking at, you know, the meet and greets, like we tried to at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. I was able to catch community members walking to work. You know, they stopped, they filled out a survey, they asked a couple of questions. But, you know, I think Sarah had brought it up. A lot of our families work 6 days a week. So 7 is, you know, Sundays, they may be off, but that's a day of rest and for families. So we would love to provide opportunities, but it's really gauging and surveying our families, to find out what is the most ideal time for you to come and engage in these types of academies and or opportunities in the district.
About the language acquisition policy. So this is our first year with Rachel. In the past, we would sit down as a committee and work through that together. So we're happy to do that with you this year as well. But I had a conversation with Laura at the beginning of the year about trying to introduce, I mean, the language acquisition policy is for Part 154. It's technical language, and that's really meant for ELs. I brought up with Laura at the start of the year, you know, in my doctoral research, I've looked into language policy, which sounds a little bit like, oh, what's right and wrong to do? And we don't want to create right and wrong with language in schools. So I use what's our philosophy? So if we can kind of simplify that academic term, what's our philosophy? How can we communicate to the teachers what is allowed and what's not allowed within those general education classes, which I think is an important conversation for each building to have. I've had teachers tell me, oh, I was naughty, I used Google Translate. Well, there's a time and place for Google Translate. We don't want the child just typing everything into Google Translate. It's almost an addiction that's going to harm them from learning the English, but there is a time and place that they can use it, especially communicating with parents. You know, language policy, when I was reading about it in the research, we have, it can be explicit or it can be not explicit. So we could stay here till midnight and write out what is our language policy today. As our kids walk through these walls, what are we communicating to the students as to when it's appropriate to use the language and when it's not? I had a sub a couple of weeks ago that prohibited them from using Spanish. And they were not happy about that. So is it okay to use Spanish in chemistry class or history class? If so, when? How can the teachers incorporate, you know, I'm working with an ELA teacher for ELA 11, and every slide has the key ideas in Spanish, French, and Albanian. You know, is that okay? Do the teachers, does the math teacher view that as okay, or does she view it as naughty? So I think that is an important conversation to have at the district and building level, to say what are we one currently communicating with our learners and non-ELs as well, the Norwegian who's coming in, the Dutch who's coming in, the Chinese, and the non-ELs who are outside of my realm. But what are we communicating? Are they allowed to use these languages in school? Are they not allowed? If so, when? So just kind of thinking about that. And I have one that's hanging on my wall. This is Miss Campbell's language philosophy, but I think that's an important conversation to have on building and district.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. I want to echo what the other board member said for the presentation tonight, but most importantly for what you're all doing in the district on a daily basis. Thank you for sharing that. It made me think back, actually, particularly, I really like to hear that all the families are coming to the back to school nights. It made me think back to one memory. I think it might have been when my daughter Vivian was in Miss Guido's class in first grade. And we got to back to school night, and there was a desk next to my daughter's without a parent there. And my husband coached the girl in soccer. And so you had to leave a picture, I think, you know, to your kid. And so he drew something for her. And, you know, I did know the parents spoke Spanish, and to think back now, thinking that they didn't feel maybe comfortable to be there and how that impacted the kid, you know, the next day. That's been really helpful to reflect on tonight. And so thank you for that. You know, at the time we noticed we did a little something, but we didn't know that there was more to be done. So it's great that you're helping to raise that. Yeah.
Another thing that happens is sometimes they don't come because they do not know the importance of the meeting. They do not know why they should be there. So sometimes I try to rally other parents, and one parent say, oh, no, we don't really want to go because it's not that important. And we're also fighting with those things, where if they know what the meeting is about and how important it is, they might come, even if they're a little bit uncomfortable, because they want to do the best thing for their children. So I've run into that situation where they talk to another neighbor or another friend and say, oh, no, that's not too important, and they do not come. I've had times where I've had a translator available for them in the classroom, and a friend told the other 4 it's not important, and they don't show up. And so I've had to fight that thing. So I think it's also important for the parents to know what happens at back to school. This is where you find out about the curriculum. This is where you find out about other routines. They do not know. They only know back to school. So, and then we translate that. What does that really mean in their world? So I think it's important for them to know what each meeting is about. They know what a parent-teacher conference is. That's about my job. But they might not know about the other meetings we have, or how important it is to click on this link because it takes you to the conferences. So they see messages from the school and they do not read it. So I think we have to also get to the point where we tell them this is important because, and that's how important it is when we have a central location or picture. These are the things you're going to see. These are the things that are important. Someone like that liaison that we're talking about to talk about that. And I think it'll clear up some of those incidents we've had in the past. I remember that too. And I've had to go to classrooms to write notes for kids quickly at night or in the morning so they have something there, finish bookmarks and do a lot of things. Just like your husband, but tell him I thank you.
No, thank you. He'll say thank you for doing this every day since then. So that was just my personal experience on that. But I've been thinking also just about bridging the parent community. So, you know, I think that's reflected in here, but I just wanted to highlight it. I think that just in that picture that you had, you know, there's the school, right? The home, the school, the community, but if there was a way to help, you know, Spanish speaking, English speaking parents come together more, right, and be able to communicate. So I also heard, which I love, the English classes for parents, but I was also wondering if you've thought about teaching Spanish to English speaking parents, right, and how you can make that class collaborative, right, because then you can communicate with each other. And whether we start with, you know, translator, maybe those headsets you can get on a personal level, right? So not just one person translating something for a group, but 2 people speaking in different languages to each other, you know, at a PTA meeting or, and then again, just perhaps, you know, whether it's in the village level or at the school district, but bringing in teaching Spanish, you know, I know you could do it in all these kinds of online things, but if we could come together as a community to learn together, I think that would help too. Then you go to meetings and you know people, right? You know, you have that bridge. So thank you for letting me share that. And then just the last question, I was curious actually, my very first question when I got here, and Janet, you did answer it too, to Neil's point. But when you said ENL, my understanding was that students who come in not being able to, you know, with English not as their first language. But now I know there's another term, non-ELs, right, which are, so just to be clear, those are English speaking students, right, who've grown up here speaking English, but their parents, right, or their family members or someone in the extended family do not speak English maybe as their first language. And so it sounds like they don't always fall under the purview of, right, the ELL. So are you able to locate them? Do you have that kind of support right now? Do you have that kind of data? Like, is there anything else
There's a
that can be
running
done?
list. There's a running list that's
Right.
follows school
If you
to
come
school.
into kindergarten, I'm searching for you on orientation. I'm at the door, I'm in the presentation, and I go into the classroom searching for the students, and then I ask the teachers to help me to identify it. So we've been able to locate the non-Ls.
Okay.
I don't know how Blanca fell through the cracks, but we try collaboratively in my building to find out. And Carrie meets a lot of them on the first time when they come to register, so she lets me know. The teachers already know to reach out to me, and I put them on a list. I have a running list.
Yeah.
And I add them there, and then I know, okay, they need translation of what type is it, Chinese, Spanish, or whatever it is, Poland. And I'm able to locate them like that. So this is something I've been working on this year. Really, it's been a challenge because, I also teach and I have all these other responsibilities in the building, not because they give it to me, but because there's a need. So I'm trying to keep a very clear list, and then I try to pass it on to Catherine because my kids go to her. So we're doing all this engagement, but one of the things I do want to say too is that I think sometimes we're hard on ourselves and what we're doing as a district, but I think as a district, we're doing really well. And I think we have to give ourselves credit for that too, because we've come a long way from the day I walked through these doors to today. So I also have to say that the district has changed a lot of things and a lot of policies. And one of the things I want to say is the administrators, including all of them from top to bottom, have been very open, very helpful. And perhaps we can't solve all the problems, but they have given us a voice and given us but also sharing ideas and giving us feedback and helping us do that. But I think we also have to include the parents. The parents have a responsibility, and we need to teach them and help them understand that, yes, you can trust us as teachers because that's part of the culture. We trust the teacher, but here we need you to be part of this process. And I think that's something we also need to help the parents understand. They need to not stand back and not be laid back about it, but also be included in this and know that they are an important part of this process. So parents need to understand that they are an important part of this process. So I just want to say that because we say we need to do this, we need to do that, but the parents also have a responsibility, and sometimes they leave it up to us.
Yes.
And I know they trust us, but I think we've gotten to the point where in CET, you have a responsibility because I'm calling you and telling you need to show up to this event. It's important for the caterer. Conferences are important. So I think as we go along the years and I've passed over here, hopefully we have parents that are coming through our doors and understanding it's important and why it's important. So I think that's.
So we need more of you. We need more of you, all of you, right? I mean, that's what it sounds like, you're doing it a lot.
I just wanted
Yeah.
kind of to tie in what Mary said, but also with what Janet said, is one thing though that I think we have to be very cognizant of as professionals and as a district is also not making an assumption or an overgeneralization based on either where a family is coming to us from or their name. Sometimes I think people jump to a conclusion that because this person's last name might be of a Hispanic or a Latino background, but no, I think it happens and people are well-intentioned. For example, we have a family that's going to be joining us next week that just moved here from Israel. The automatic assumption when they found out that they were moving here from Israel was that the child spoke Hebrew and not English. Well, the child has been in an English-speaking school from preschool on. So it's important it is to identify families. I don't want to overgeneralize or make those assumptions because I think that can be harmful as well. So I think that we are being aware of that and really listening and asking the right questions and having the right people ask the right questions is so important so that we don't overgeneralize or make an assumption that's not appropriate.
So just one quick follow-up on that. It sounds like that would be helpful with data. Like, is as part of the registration process, is that something you can ask?
Well, I think
are there other
we're-
languages? Right?
So
Yes.
we do.
Yeah.
But it's not
we
always
do offer
accurate.
that, but I think speaking to what Janet was explaining is that there's a culture around that, right? Like the parents don't have to identify the languages spoken at home as contingency, right, for registration. We do house that data in Infinite Campus. So that can be helpful, but it is not
Gotcha.
always correct because we need parents to feel comfortable to identify the languages that are spoken at home and also to understand the importance of giving that information up, right? So we do ask for it, but it's not something that's mandatory.
It's a
Say it again,
home
so we're
language
accurate, yeah.
survey
Right.
that's completed during the registration process.
Right.
Through those results and, each teacher's observations of the incoming students, they make a determination if a screener needs to be done. To really, measure the students' language and during their initial days in school. And that is also a data point which allows for them to place them in a group to support them with language and or just be cognizant that the parent may need that level of support as a non-L family.
Great, thank you.
As Ms. Cuellar says, it's not just a responsibility of the schools, but the parents. And I'm trying to talk with some Spanish families here and telling them, we cannot let all the responsibilities to school. We have to be part of the school system, going to meetings, trying to know, reading the emails, trying to be with our kids sitting. They start, if you have kids in pre-K, kindergarten, we have to sit with them, ask them, and they say we're tired, and we don't have time, we work too much. And I said, when your kids start failing and the grades later, you're gonna regret it, that you're gonna yell at your kid, you're gonna do this. That's why I'm trying to them to be part of that meetings, even if they don't speak English. I push them to go to the meetings and I volunteer to this Señora Blanca to help with everything. I call her, even if she doesn't call me, I call her. But I said, the parents, Spanish people, sometimes they work too much, they want to do a lot more, but they have to be involved of the kids' education. And I say thank you to the school and everything they helping us, but as a parent, if we don't get involved, how we can be able to help our kids? They are the future, so it's in our hands to help our kids.
Well, thank you. My last comment was just what I think Ms. Campbell alluded to too. Whenever anyone would say, I'm sorry, I don't speak English very well, I say, you're the only one that knows 2 languages here. So please, no apologies there. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you for all your hard work on building inclusivity in our community. I was wondering if some of the communication challenges, if you know whether any of those are maybe a result of technological challenges families may have, whether it's access to computers or access to the internet itself. And yeah.
I did a small research. A lot of the families do not have a computer at home.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to put a computer in my room as a resource, because we don't have any other space. I would like a little space for them, but there's no space at CT. That's why I want to offer them a computer to help them not only learn how to use them, but to have access to it. I have a few students in a particular grade that the teachers kept the computer at school for a specific reason. And I was telling them, why are you not doing my homework? It's just to read, and I monitor the reading, And I said, okay, raise your hand if you have a computer at home. None of my students have a computer at home. The ones they have are the ones we provide for them. So we assume that they all have computers at home. They don't, they have a phone.
And internet.
So not always do they have a computer at home. Some do, some do not, some have iPads. But that's something we have to take into consideration when we say, no, we're gonna send this information. The students have their computers that they can take home, but then there's some students that they cannot take home because they use managed school. So I was able to get them computers to use at home, and we got them to the places this week with the parent teachers conferences, but that is an issue at times. And also another thing that's an issue is sometimes we send out emails that are so wordy and so long that they don't even look at it. So when they do.
That doesn't just apply.
There's a lot of comments. Amongst all.
Or on the lunch forms or whatever. I didn't see it, but sometimes we send lengthy things and they don't read it because it's too long. And sometimes they don't know that if you scroll down, it's the Spanish version. So I have to, remind them of this and help them understand that. So we do have a few things that are happening in terms of the communication or in terms of the computers. We have so many different issues depending on the year and the grade and the families when it comes to technology and when it comes to information being dispersed.
Thank you for that. And I raised the issue just because the community resource directory, as wonderful of a resource that would
How are they
be,
gonna get it?
if they can't access it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
can we,
I
maybe
know,
something to
there's
think about?
Paper.
Are there other ways to communicate or do some outreach that doesn't just solely rely on providing information on the website?
And that's what's happening now. Our website has all the information. We've had problems with lunch forms. We have had problems with signing up for conferences. We have problems with K-12 alert. We have problems with basic things that we need in order to help the child have what they need. Supplies are online for school supplies. Your teacher, the teacher for the following year, it's online. Everything is online. We assume that they are going online to look at the information. I don't know about the codes, but this is a big problem for the beginners. For someone who's in kindergarten, someone who's in first grade. Then another issue we have is sometimes they do speak the language and they reach out and say, listen, I'm having issues with this website. Sometimes there's a glitch on our end that causes a problem. Not always, but we ran into a few of those glitches this year. But everything is online. And for those who are not computer savvy, it's very difficult to know what's going on.
Let's say I would just, oh, sorry. I would say just quickly, I would actually, on this one, I would disagree. All my families have devices, not computers, but they do have the phones. But if we look at my clientele versus Ms. Plato's clientele, mine are, the kids themselves are tech savvy. So, oh, mom, yeah, we can put Infinite Campus on an app and yeah, this is, so they have their own little teachers because they're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. So I would disagree, but I think if you look at the clientele, that would explain why.
My parents don't have a kid telling them. My
Yeah.
kindergarten can't
It's
read.
different.
My parents- And they could have that phone and they could flash it all day long, but a kindergarten cannot tell you, Mom, click on this link and let's make an appointment and this is my teacher. So that's the differences between all the three schools. By the time they get over here to fifth grade, the kids can tell Mom.
No, that's okay. So I did just want to add to, we have recently taken our fifth graders over to the Croton Free Library, which was a fantastic experience. Their favorite part was, just as an aside, when they told the kids they were allowed to scream as loud as they could in the quiet area for once, the only time ever. But once they had their attention, then they were able to share things like the resources that they have there, and they have computers in the library. They have access to multilingual information through the library. We all know what happened in March 2020, but March 2020 is when we had that library event. And I had parents who were jumping up and down, filling out like their contact info, and times they might be free because the library wanted to partner with us to do a conversational English class, which could also involve English speakers speaking Spanish. We could do this all sorts of different ways. So there are lots of different pieces to this puzzle that I think too, with the community being involved in the library. So that can be a resource as well, in addition to what we're talking about.
And tutoring too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one major injustice that I see at the high school level. So often the gen ed students, you're not doing so well in geometry, we'll get you a tutor. I mean, that's just not happening. So I love to see peer-to-peer tutors, the library tutoring, and try to send the kids that way.
Does anyone else have any other questions? for the team? All right. Well, thank you again, and thank you for your answers and discussing with us tonight. So we appreciate this presentation and look forward to hearing how things continue to evolve. Thank you very much. We'll let you guys know. Have a nice night. That's it
One
for us,
more
I think,
agenda
actually.
item today.
Good, so we just, yeah, recommended action that the Board of Education adjourns the meeting at 10:24 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?